his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Vayigash means, and he came near. And that's because this Torah portion starts off with Judah coming near to Joseph. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a recap. We ended last week's Torah portion with Joseph asking his servants to place a silver cup in his little brother Benjamin's bag before they were leaving to go back to their father. And then he pretended that his cup was stolen and he wanted to look for it. And he said, whoever has my cup is going to have to stay here as my servant. Obviously, they found it in Benjamin's cup, which is the youngest of the 12 brothers. With that being said, he said, nope, now Judah has to stay here and he has to be my servant. But if we recall from the week prior, Israel, or Jacob, said, if you guys take Benjamin and he doesn't come back, I'm going to die because he's my youngest child. I only had 2 sons with his mother, and he's the only one left because he assumed that Joseph was dead. So now Judah is pleading with Joseph, and this is where we pick up. And we're going to start reading in our Bibles, Genesis chapter 44, starting in verse 30. This is Judah talking to Joseph, pleading with Joseph. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, he's talking about Israel, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die. And thy servants shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surely for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my sovereign, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me? Lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father. So Judah, this is the same Judah that a few weeks ago when we were reading, we read that he suggested that they sell Joseph to the Ishmaelites as a slave. This is that same Judah. The same Judah that was jealous of Joseph for having a dream that everybody was going to bow down to Joseph's feet. Now Judah is bowing down to Joseph's feet unknowingly, pleading to take the place of Benjamin. This shows a big growth in Judah, from the man that he was back then and the man he is where we're at right now in the Torah portion. So what he's saying to Joseph is, please, if we go back without my little brother Benjamin, my father is going to die. So please let me take his place, because I promised my father that I would take care of him, that I would make sure that he came back. Now remember, Joseph has not told anybody, any of his brothers, that he is Joseph. And his biggest thing is he wants to see his dad. So when he hears this, he hears that if Benjamin doesn't go back, my dad is going to die. This is his response. We're going to continue reading chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. So he hears his dad's going to die if he doesn't let Benjamin come back home, and he's like, I have to come clean. I have to tell them that it's me. he lets them know, it's me. Now, how does he do this? Well, back in those times, only, my brain just went somewhere, but only God's people, only Yahweh's people circumcised their sons. So obviously Joseph was circumcised. The Egyptians didn't do that. So he proved to them that he was their brother by showing them, look, I am circumcised like you guys. I come from your lineage. When he reveals that he's Joseph, his brothers cannot respond to him. Why is that? They were terrified. Why do you think they were terrified? Because probably a few reasons, right? One, they probably thought they were never going to see him again, right? Another reason is that their dad didn't know the truth about what happened. If you remember, they took the famous coat of many colors, and they dipped it in the blood of an animal, and they told their dad that he was torn to pieces by an animal, okay? So their dad thinks that he's dead, but really it's because of them that he's gone. So Joseph is the proof that they lied and they did their dad real dirty, okay? Another reason and probably the biggest reason why they're scared is Joseph has a lot of power. According to the Bible, he is second in command to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. So his word is law. Pharaoh's given him everything. He has all the authority. On top of the authority that he has every reason to want to seek vengeance. Those two things together, power plus vengeance, can be a very bad combination, especially for the brothers that did him so wrong, okay? If I was him, I would want vengeance, okay? But that's just me. If my brothers threw me in a pit and then sold me into slavery, I would want all of the smoke. But let's see how he responds. Let's read the next verse, verse 5. This is what he says to his brothers. Now therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me here. For Elohim did send me before you to preserve life. All right. Joseph does not deny their sin. He doesn't try to pretend what they did to him did not happen. Instead, he reframes it through Yahweh's purpose. He says, don't be afraid. I'm not going to do anything to you guys. Don't worry about what you did to me, because it was Yahweh that really put me here. And he put me here with a purpose. The enemy had a plan for Joseph. A plan for rejection, a plan for slavery, a plan to be in prison. But Yahweh also had a plan for Joseph. He had a plan of position, a plan of preservation, and the survival of Israel, of his people. This is a perfect example of what the enemy means for evil. Yahweh will turn it for his good.
Amen.
Let's continue reading verse 6. This is him still talking to his brothers. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now, it was not you that sent me here, but Elohim. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and sovereign of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. So he's letting them know, you guys are not the ones that put me here. This was Yahweh's plan all along. Don't worry yourselves. I'm not mad. This was Yahweh's plan all along. One part I want to focus on in verse 7 is where he says to preserve you a posterity. Other versions will say a remnant. And here's that word again, a remnant of people being saved. And I wanted to look into the Hebrew word for remnant. Next slide. It's called shiret. And this refers to a small portion of people left after judgment or calamity, symbolizing Yahweh's faithfulness to preserve a seed of his people, a remnant. This is something that we see throughout Scripture. We saw it with Noah and the flood. We saw it with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. Even later on, we're going to see only a remnant of people actually make it to the promised land. All the majority of people that make it to the promised land were born after they left Egypt. But we see it here again with the famine. We're going to read a little bit more about this famine. Let's continue on verse 9. Haste ye and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, Elohim hath made me sovereign of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou have come to poverty. If you guys recall, when Pharaoh had the dream, Joseph let him know this dream means that we're going to have 7 years of famine. Famine means the crops aren't going to grow the way that they should, or the animals aren't going to be reproducing the way they should. And this is not in these times where we can make provisions. We can make greenhouses and do these kind of things. Back then, if you were not prepared for a famine, that was it for you. That was it for you and your family. You starved. You starved. But praise Yahweh that he's intentional with everything that he does. This famine was not just in Egypt, it was in the entire world. So only the people who knew it was coming, which I believe Yahweh selects a remnant of people to see the truth about what's about to happen, were able to save themselves and their families. Endurance often precedes blessing. This is also something that we see time and time again. David endured caves and even a giant before he got to the crown. Israel endured slavery before freedom. And Yeshua endured the cross before his resurrection. Joseph's suffering was not random, it was strategic. Because this famine forced reconciliation between him and his brothers. It brought his family back together. And it moved Israel to Goshen, where they're going to multiply. Let's continue reading on. We're going to skip to verse 16. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Say unto thy brethren, this do ye lade your beasts, and go get you unto the land of Canaan. And take your father and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, this do ye, take ye wagons out of the land of Egypt, for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Also, regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. Pharaoh admires Joseph so much that when he hears he's reconciled with his brothers, he rejoices. And he says, tell your brothers and your dad and all of your family to come here, and I'm going to give you guys the best of the best. I'm going to give you Goshen. Later on in the Torah portion, as we continue reading in the Torah portion, we're going to see that Yahweh visits Jacob, or Israel, in a dream, and he encourages him to go to Goshen to be with Joseph. So he gets his whole family, and it goes through the lineage, and they go. and a small family is going to enter into Egypt, but later it's going to become a nation that Pharaoh cannot ignore, that Pharaoh fears. And this is going to lead us into the Exodus, but we're not going to go there yet. Later on in Exodus, we're going to touch on a little bit, we're going to see that when the plagues come, certain plagues, the ones that go over the land, it doesn't touch Goshen. There's verses that say, like, even when Egypt felt dark, there was still light in Goshen. So Goshen represents separation and provision. This was Yahweh being strategic again, bringing his people to a place where they would still be somewhat protected. So not only did Joseph's journey save the Israelites from the famine, later on in the Bible, it kept them separated and protected from the plagues. After reading the story of Joseph, we see that Joseph is one of the clearest pictures of Yeshua. Joseph was rejected by his brothers. Yeshua was rejected by his own people. Joseph was sold for silver. Yeshua was betrayed for silver. Joseph suffered unjustly. Yeshua suffered without any sin. And after that suffering, Joseph was exalted to authority. He was second in command to Pharaoh. After suffering, Yeshua was exalted to the right hand of Yahweh. Joseph was able to provide bread to the nations. He was able to make provisions so that during the famine, he could provide them with bread. And Yeshua is the bread of life. Joseph couldn't see the full plan, not when he was in the pit, not when he was in Potiphar's house being a slave, not even when he was in the prison, forgotten about. But Yahweh was present in every season. And this is what I want you guys to remember, and I'm going to say it a few more times. What the enemy means for evil, Yahweh will turn for good. Amen. This story is a reminder of that. When the enemy brings betrayal, delay, loss, or injustice into your life, Yahweh can turn it for good. He'll turn it for good if we remain faithful, if we refuse bitterness, and if we trust in his timing. The same Yahweh who preserved Joseph, the same Yahweh who preserved Israel, is still preserving a remnant of his people today. Let's turn our Bibles real quick to Romans chapter 8. Only one verse I want to read out of it. Romans chapter 8, verse 8. So then, they that are in the flesh, 28. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong verse. 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love Elohim, to them who are the called according to his purpose. There's two things that we're going to take away from there. Yahweh will work everything for its good. It says to them who love him. Who loves Yahweh? The people who keep his commandments, the obedient ones. It also says to those who are called. Well, everybody sitting here right now, you've been called, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone sitting here right now, we have had our spiritual eyes open to see the truth. Therefore, we have all been called by Yahweh. So if we continue to love him, meaning be obedient and keep his commandments, then Yahweh will always work everything out for us in our good. I didn't say it. The Bible said, okay? So what the enemy means for evil, Yahweh will turn for good, to preserve life, to reveal his glory, and to save his remnant, to save his chosen people. This Torah portion reminds us that Yahweh does not rush revelation. Remember, Joseph had that dream years He allows the process to run its full course, not because he's distant, but because he is precise. Joseph lived many years with unanswered questions. Why did I have this dream and nothing came to pass? Why did I get sold by my brothers? Why was I a slave? Why am I in prison, forgotten about? There was no angelic explanation in the pit. He himself had no prophetic dreams in the prison. He had no reassurance when he was forgotten by the cupbearer. All he had was his faithfulness and what he couldn't understand. But all along, Yahweh was positioning him. Many of us struggle today because we believe that if we're going through a hard time, it's because we missed Yahweh's will. When in reality, hardships often mean we're exactly where he wants us. Joseph didn't rise despite his suffering, because he did suffer. He rose through it. Amen. If he never would have been thrown in the pit, he never would have been sold into slavery, he never would have made it to Potiphar's house. If Potiphar's wife didn't falsely accuse him, he never would have made it to the prison. And if he was never in the prison, he never would have encountered the cupbearer who eventually remembered him for translating his dream. And then he never would have made it to the right hand of Pharaoh to save his family and ultimately the lineage of Yeshua, Amen, our Savior. Joseph's greatest victory was not a throne. It was remaining faithful when no one was watching. Some blessings don't come quickly because they're not meant to bless only you. Yes, he was eventually blessed with that dream that he dreamed where everybody was bowing down to him, but it had to go a certain way so that he could bless his entire family. If Yahweh has delayed something in your life, it may be because the calling requires you to have more depth than you currently have. You might need to mature a little bit. You might need a little bit more wisdom. Delay is not denial. In closing, if you're in a pit, remember that Yahweh still sees you. If you're being falsely accused, remember that Yahweh is your vindicator. And if you are waiting, remember that Yahweh is never late. He's always on time. Do not quit in the chapter where Yahweh is building your testimony, because testimonies are so important. Joseph's story reminds us that Yahweh doesn't rescue us from the famine, but he uses us to rescue others in those times. So stand firm, remain faithful, and trust the process. Because when Yahweh finishes the story, you're going to see that what the enemy meant for evil, Yahweh is always going to turn it for his good. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Good talk portion.